I want to hear from you guys. I'm going to open up the chat because you guys have a lot of thoughts on this. I am sure you guys have a lot of thoughts on this. And I definitely want to hear from you guys because, again, I'm not super close to it all, but you guys may have a perspective that I may not have, right? And you guys may have more information on this that I do not have. And I'd love to hear from you guys because you guys are a bunch of brilliant individuals. And I think you guys can add to the conversation. So come on in and mute, and I'll give you guys an opportunity to give your feedback on this and what you guys are thinking of this Ja Morant situation. You know, when I think of Ja Morant, I think of, this is who I think of, right? A guy who, you know, comes from a cool family, but this is what, you know, he represents to a lot of people as well too. The gold teeth, right? The guy who likes to have a lot of fun, right? The young high school kid that thinks that this is a good look, right? This is what a lot of people say that Ja Morant is. And people are sharing that this is just a culture situation right here, right? And I gotta say this. I'm not gonna excuse myself from being a knucklehead as a young kid. You know, as a high schooler, early high school years, hip hop was it, you know, 3-6 Mafia, right? No Limit, Cash Money. That was the music that I listened to during that time. But also, we grew up, and I grew up fast. So I'm not going to, you know, say anything bad about our man Ja from the standpoint of, you know, how he is as a young guy growing up, because I was a knucklehead as well too. And it's part of a culture. Right. But I look back at it and I say this today. I say it's a knucklehead culture. It's a knucklehead culture and it doesn't get you far. And hopefully he can grow out of it. Right. Because I'm very far from that today. And I'm happy that I'm very far from that today. When I look at, you know, Ja just says, you know, he's going through some growing pains at this point in time. And hopefully he can switch it around. Now, in fairness, I didn't have the guidance that he potentially has, you know, father in a household and so forth. And he does. So you would think that, you know, when you have this level of... What's up, Ladder Climbers? It's Antoine Wade. I wanted to interrupt this video to talk to you guys about Course Careers. Course Careers is the place that you guys need to go if you have a high interest into tech sales. They will help you gain the skills that you need so that you can enter the tech sales world to make a whole bunch of money. Tech sales salaries early on is about $60,000, guys. That's a good salary. And with OTEs, you can make anywhere from $85,000 to $90,000. If you have an interest in tech sales, check out Course Careers, link in the description. And don't forget to use Antoine50 so that you can get a $50 discount off of Course Careers. See you guys in tech sales. You know, discipline around you and so forth. These aren't going to be the same mistakes that you make, but apparently that's not the case. But either way, he did come out and apologize. There's a lot to learn from his situation because it can harm you. And you saw and you see that it's harming himself. It's harming his money. It's harming his family. It's harming the organization that he's part of. And if you were to do something very similar in its own little way in a tech space, it can harm you as well, too. So we got our first caller coming in, our brother Kamal Milik coming to us from Japan. And I want to hear what you have to say about this, Kamal. Come off mute and share with the audience. What are your thoughts on this whole Ja Morant thing and how it relates to how we have to conduct ourselves in certain situations, whether we are entertainer or in tech, man? Go ahead and give us your feedback, my man.
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Yeah. So I can say growing up, I came across a lot of people in my childhood and even young adulthood, the way that he chooses to behave and carry himself. But I will say, thankfully, since he's very talented, I think he won't be affected like an average everyday person would. But also, hopefully, he understands the seriousness of his actions, since waving a gun around in a club is not a safe action. And let's say he was drunk and carrying a gun, which is even worse. If it would have went off, what would have happened?
Could have hurt a lot of people. Man. He certainly could have hurt a lot of people. He's under the influence of alcohol. Man, and talk about the people that you came around, Kamal, and were you influenced by this sort of a culture growing up? Because I got to say it. I was that guy that listened to, you know, music of hip hop artists and so forth. And I was influenced. Now, was I a gun carrier? Absolutely not. Did I sag my pants? Absolutely not. Did I have golds? Absolutely not. But I was around guys who had that. And it was it was cool in where I grew up around that space. But talk about you. Did you grow up around this culture? Was this culture part of you? And give your feedback there.
I would say it wasn't who I was, but growing up in the inner city of St. Louis,
Mm,
definitely I saw a lot of people around me who were a part of that culture. And I will say I faced a lot of criticism and pressure to adapt to that culture. And it only became acceptable for me to be how I am just normally, like most people are, once I
mm.
left the area and kind of went away from it.
You said something. You said something. You got influenced to be a part of that culture, and when you wasn't part of that culture, you kind of you kind of was looked at a certain way. How were you looked at? Explain how you were looked at.
So mainly just being, well, I guess they would say being a nerd or being a lame or
Mm.
being boring, or like you said in one of your recent lives, being corny, like Michael B. Jordan.
So you grew up in the city of St. Louis. That's where I invest a lot of dollars. I love St. Louis, a beautiful city. And you grew up, in a culture where this was pretty common. Obviously, this look was pretty common. I'll go back to the look, guys. I'll go back to the look. I'll go back to the look. This is the Ja Morant look, right? Was common, and when you didn't, conform to this, people looked at you as being, corny, right?
Yes, sir.
Interesting. This is a culture. This is a culture that is out there, and I can tell you this right now. Come on, I'll share a personal story. This wasn't me early on as well, too. I got to say this. It wasn't me early on as well. Going into my ninth grade year, I went to a school called Orangeburg Wilkinson. Great school, but a predominantly black school in South Carolina. And I was considered to be the nerd my ninth grade year and throughout school before. I did my work, man. I did my work. I was that guy that was straight laced, but my 10th grade year, I recognized something, as a young man who's starting to, really like the, girls and so forth. I recognized that the guys who looked like Ja Morant were getting a lot of attention. I recognized the guys who looked like Ja Morant with the chains on and the goals in their mouth. They got a lot of attention, right? I'll go back to it. They got a lot of attention. And I had this girlfriend at the time. And she liked guys like this, although, she was dating me. So, of course, I lost myself after we broke up, trying to be a guy that was cool like this. And ultimately went down the wrong path, started skipping school, didn't do any drugs or anything like that, but started hanging out with, folks who were a little bit older than I, quit the football team, just wanted to be a knucklehead, right? And my sophomore year in high school, I ended that year with like a 2.3 GPA. And I had an opportunity to leave that school because my mother got an opportunity to move to Wisconsin for a job. And I had an option to stay or leave. I chose to leave. And I went to a completely different culture, a different city in Madison, Wisconsin, where the population was completely different in high school, right? So the high school that I was at in Orangeburg was a majority black school. Then the high school that I went to in Wisconsin was a 98% white school, right? And I was like, one of those black dudes that was at the school, right? But the culture was completely different, right? Being that kind of Ja Morant culture, that wasn't cool for that school, right? And that wasn't cool, and that wasn't going to get you any attention at all. And I recognized really quick that the world was a lot bigger than the subculture that I grew up with in, the small town that I was from in 9th and 10th grade. So, that was a turning point for me within my life that really showed that, holy crap, man, like this culture, don't get me wrong, it's highly contagious, but it's not the rest of the world. And I recognize that really quick. And also, it's not the attention that you also want as well, too, because it doesn't open a lot of doors for you. It doesn't open any doors for you at all. So I had to change. And, I got back on the right track, long story short, graduate with, great grades and went to college and continue to evolve to be the person that's on TV right now. But looking back at it with a lens, I can see how people fall into this sort of a trap, and how it's a culture that, I'm gonna tell you like this, guys, does not represent anything that's positive. You will see later on in life, when you look back at it, you're gonna see a lot of those people who conducted themselves that way, basically aren't winning. They aren't winning. And the people who dated those kind of people, they aren't winning as well too, right? So I just wanted to share that with you guys, and I'm glad that you said it too, Kamal, about your experience and growing up in a culture like this as well too. Anything else you want to say before I turn it over to my other guest that's part of the line?
Well, we'll say what you said is definitely true about pretty much just our communities that we grow up in are extremely small in comparison to the rest of the world. So we'll also say my first time actually in Japan was back in 2016 when I was 19 years old. And I did have several people that I knew who also came from similar backgrounds as myself. And they did try to do the same things here. And this is definitely not a place that you want to do those type of activities. And they definitely did not last long.
You guys better straighten up. You want to go far. You want to get into tech. I think the challenge is, I think people will have to really, really think about this if they wanted to get into tech. And the question also that I'm starting to see too is, when you start to get to the money, is this the culture that's going to exist outside of tech or in tech? I don't know.